All right, today we're diving into a really important medical condition. It's one that you might not have heard of, but it can have some pretty serious consequences, especially for younger folks. We're going to be talking all about carotid artery dissection, and believe me, understanding this stuff is crucial. Take a look at this number. 20%. That is the share of ischemic strokes, we're talking strokes caused by a blockage in young and middle-aged adults that are caused by a tear in a neck artery. That is a shocking statistic for a condition that, honestly, isn't that well known outside of medical circles. It's called carotid artery dissection, or CAD for short.
So what is really going on inside the body to trigger something as major as a stroke? That's the big question we're going to unpack today. We're going to break down exactly what happens, how doctors find it, and what they do about it.
Okay, let's start at the very beginning. What in the world is a carotid artery dissection? To really get why it's so dangerous, we need to paint a clear picture of what's physically happening inside that artery.
So, in simple terms, a carotid artery dissection is a tear. It happens in the inner lining of your carotid artery, which is basically one of the main superhighways carrying blood up to your brain. When that inner layer gets a tear, blood under pressure can force its way between the layers of the artery wall, creating a brand new and very dangerous channel. This is what's known as a false lumen.
Let's walk through this step by step. So, you start with a healthy artery, right? Blood is flowing smoothly, no problem. But then, step 2, a tear forms in that delicate inner lining. From there, blood pressure does the rest. It starts pushing blood into that tear, literally peeling the layers of the artery apart. And here's where it gets really dangerous. This trapped pocket of blood, it's called a hematoma. It starts to grow and it squeezes the real channel, narrowing it or sometimes blocking it completely. And if blood flow to the brain gets blocked, well, that's what can lead to a stroke.
So you're probably wondering, what causes that initial tear in the first place? Well, it usually happens one of two ways. It can be spontaneous, which often means there's some underlying weakness in the artery wall, maybe from a condition like fibromuscular dysplasia. Or it can be traumatic. Now, this could be from something major like a car accident, but, and this is the really surprising part, it can also be triggered by something that seems pretty minor, like a violent coughing fit, or even just a sudden jerky neck movement during sports. Okay, so if this dangerous tear is hidden deep inside the neck, how on earth do doctors find it before it's too late? Well, that brings us to the next part of our story, the detective work of diagnosis. The investigation always starts with the clues, the symptoms. And what's so tricky here is how common some of them are. Headache and neck pain are by far the most frequent signs. We're talking up to 80% of cases. But then you have other, more specific clues that can pop up. Things like Horner syndrome, which is a unique combo of a droopy eyelid and a tiny pupil, or even the symptoms of a mini-stroke called a TIA or a full-blown stroke.
So as soon as a dissection is on the table, doctors turn to imaging. And a primary tool in that toolkit is the CTA scan. Why? Because it's fast, it's accurate, and it is incredibly helpful in an emergency room or trauma situation where every single second counts.
And this gives you a perfect idea of what a doctor is looking for on that CTA scan. There's this classic sign, often called a flame-shaped narrowing. You can literally see how the artery tapers down to a sharp point right where the dissection is, and then just as suddenly it goes back to its normal width. It's a dead giveaway that there's a blockage from that hematoma inside the artery wall. Now, CTA is great for speed, but it's not the only tool doctors have. MRI and MRA can give them an even more detailed picture. And the big plus here? No radiation. Plus, they are fantastic at actually seeing the trapped blood, that hematoma that's stuck inside the artery wall itself.
With an MRI, the clues look a little different. A key finding is this crescent-shaped bright spot, which is the hematoma itself, squeezing the true channel for blood flow. Sometimes they can even see a double lumen, both the real channel and the false one. MRI is especially good at spotting hematomas that are a little bit older.
So just to quickly recap the diagnostic toolkit. CTA is the speed demon, perfect for trauma. MRI is the detail-oriented one, great for seeing the hematoma without any radiation, but it does take longer. Duplex ultrasound is super handy to use right at the bedside, but it can't always see everything. And then there's conventional angiography. It used to be the gold standard, but it's invasive, so it's used a lot less often these days.
So once the doctors have found the tear, the clock is absolutely ticking. The mission immediately shifts to treatment, and there's one main goal: stop a stroke from happening, or if one is already underway, stop it from getting any worse.
The first line of defense is medication. And the whole point is to keep blood clots from forming at the site of that tear and then traveling up to the brain. For a long, long time, there was this big debate: which is better, antiplatelets like aspirin or stronger anticoagulants like warfarin. But then a huge clinical trial, the CATUS trial, came along and found something really important. There was no significant difference between the two for preventing another stroke, and that was a game changer. Since aspirin is safer and way easier to manage, it's often the go-to choice now.
So the treatment plan usually follows these steps. You almost always start with medical therapy, those antithrombotic drugs. But if a patient's symptoms are still getting worse despite the medication, or if there are other risky signs, that's when doctors will think about endovascular treatment. We're usually talking about putting in a stent to open the artery back up. And open surgery? That's really rare, safe for only the most specific and complex cases.
So what are the red flags that tell doctors, okay, the medication isn't enough, we need to escalate to a stent? Well, it's when symptoms aren't being controlled, when there's proof that clots are still getting to the brain, or that blood flow is dangerously low. That's what doctors call hypoperfusion. Other triggers are a worsening pseudoaneurysm, which is a risky ballooning of the artery wall, or if the patient just can't take blood thinners for some other reason. Okay, after hearing about such a serious event, the question on everyone's mind is, what happens next? What does the recovery and the long-term outlook really look like for someone who's had a carotid dissection?
Well, here's the good news. For most people, the prognosis is actually quite positive. The mortality rate is less than 5%, which is really encouraging. And, as you can see here, for about 75% of patients, that narrowing in the artery actually gets better or even resolves completely on its own over time as the body just naturally heals. 1%? What's that? Well, that is the approximate risk of having another dissection happen per year. So while the risk is pretty low, it's not zero. And it's important to note that it is a little bit higher for younger patients and for people who have those underlying connective tissue disorders we talked about.
And that brings us to our final, and I think most important thought. When you think about it, the most common early symptoms are just headache and neck pain. So it raises a critical question. If more people knew about this condition, if we had greater awareness of these signs, could we help people get care earlier and maybe, just maybe, prevent a stroke before it ever has a chance to happen? It's something really important to think about.